Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Jackson, report in, please.
It feels like we just left.
Yes. Yeah, things
Isn't that
happen
amazing?
quickly. Yeah.
I love that. This was a good week. How about you? You were starting up.
Yeah, we started our first two workshops, so I'll report in on that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because one is a lot of the clients and the team members who hadn't really been on Zoom. One thing, we returned to our mainland schedule, so we have a mainland schedule for June, July, and August. So we have 125 workshops. I have 12 of them, and the rest of the coaches have, a lot.
Gotcha.
And so it was really, really interesting, and I'm really happy I did. I don't know, all told, I probably did about 60 1-hour, 2-hour, Zoom of some sort over the
sessions.
Zoom sessions. And so it wasn't too much of a stretch to go to 6 hours, because I said, it's like, it's a 2-hour session, it's a 2-hour session, and a 1-hour session, if you think about it. And that's kind of the way we organized it. And so I came up with a structure that there's 4 things you do every hour. One is you start really fast and you hit them with questions. And the questions, you give them 2 or 3 minutes to get their answers down, and you put them right into a breakout session.
Uh-huh.
And so they're not on a page with 20 other people. They're in a room with a Zoom room with 3 other people, and they've got 20 minutes. Each of them has 5 minutes, and so when they come out, they're warmed up and they've got a point of view. And then I hit them with another question that I didn't prepare them for. So this goes on so the first 25 minutes is them and their thoughts in their breakout session. And then you have another 25 minutes of just talking about their thinking about the question. So, for example, on Friday, what I hit them with was, what surprised you most about the way things were on March 1st? What surprised you most about the last 3 months in terms of how well you've performed personally, how your company has performed, and breakthroughs that you've had with clients and customers? Okay, so there's no way they would have prepared for that. Okay, so then they go in, they talk about that, and I said, isn't the way you handled the last 3 months actually the new normal for you for the, going forward? Isn't that? So, and then that catches them by surprise. And then we give them an 8-minute break. So every hour gets an 8-minute break. They come back, and then I had 4 other exercises for them over the next 4 hours. Same pattern, though. Hit them with questions. They think they put down their answers. They go into a breakout group. They come out, hit them with another question. They talk about it and give them a break. And boy, I'll tell you, it just sped by. The 6 hours just sped by.
Yeah, that's what I find that's about what we do for the Breakthrough Blueprints. We go, we start at 10 in the morning, and we go till about 12:30, 12:45, which seems like it just flies by. Then we take about an hour and 15 minutes for lunch. And then when we come back, then we go till, 5 o'clock kind of thing. And it really is, it's the perfect amount of time. And then, but the great news is, as soon as you're done, you're home. This is you're at home right up till the very moment that it starts, and then you're at home the moment after, and home for lunch.
You know what I'm thinking about doing? You know what I'm thinking about doing, and it's a British thing. You know, like the Brits, the workshop always starts the night before at 7:00 in the pub.
Right. Okay.
And then it goes into the evening at the pub. So it's a it's a strategic coach between two slices of pub.
Oh, I got it. Okay, that's funny.
It's like a strategic coach. You know, the filling is a strategic coach, but the pub and the pub. So what I'm thinking about is putting out that if anybody has their favorite refreshment, after about a half hour, we'll check back in and we'll just have like a social hour and we can talk.
Okay. There you go. The simultaneous sip.
The simultaneous sip. Yeah, the simultaneous sip. But, later in the day, so it won't be coffee,
Right.
And, and I'm thinking about that because I think that there's a lot that's going to get picked up in the social hour after people have had a chance to, it's not structured. It's just, what I got out of it. And if you did, you could go into a breakout session and people could, kind of, this is the thoughts, and then come back out and talk about the general session and, just have it freewheeling, just have it sort of not a structure to it, but just, what do you think about this?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think about Cloudland? What do you think about Cloudland, Dan?
Yeah. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
You talk.
I've heard
you talk.
Okay. I've heard, Dan, from several people now that the breakout sessions are very, very more focused. Have you heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Everything's more focused. I just feel like I've heard that because that's what I said to people would be one of the biggest qualitative differences in the workshops is that the breakout sessions would actually be, I think, more effective, I guess, because there's no peripheral distraction, and you're actually randomly put in with different people, and I think that's going to add to it, add to the experience. Well, I think the what I do is my program. So I have a program advisor who checks in on people continually throughout the 90 days, and then has 5 or 6 people who have really had exceptional challenges or they've had exceptional breakthroughs. Yeah. And I know this before the workshop, and then when they do the breakouts, and we have 5 hours of coaching, we have 5 breakout sessions, and I'm put in with the people who have stories, so I know their stories, and I talk to them, and when the breakout session, I said, you just really, like this guy, one guy from Massachusetts, really, amazing. He's created a franchise operation. And I won't go into it because it's, I'll just describe it generally because I don't want to give the specifics of it. But he went through a massive kind of rebellion on the part of his franchise owners, and he went through a bankruptcy, and then he went through a divorce. And about a month ago, he had a son die.
Oh, no.
And he hasn't been in the program for 4 years, but when we called him, he says, I'd like to get back into the program. And my program advisor phoned him on Thursday to say, we're having Zoom calls. He said, I'm going to sign up right away. And he came in and talked about it. So I had him just tell his story. And, everybody's got their story of challenge, of one kind or another during the last 3 months. But this was kind of, and he said, I could choose to be alone with what's happened to me, or I could choose to be among people who, as entrepreneurs, they totally understand me. And I just chose to be with people who understand me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
But he wouldn't have done that if it was in person and he had to get on an airplane and fly.
Right. I agree. That what a what a wonderful way to bring people back into the fold. For years, this was something we did this in person, but in live events, but this may be a strategy that you could use.
Well, I've got 11,000 who have been in coach. I mean, that's a big marketplace of people who are familiar. Well, they're kind of familiar, they kind of know what it's about. But the barrier was probably the travel.
Well, and that's interesting.
We'll see.
Well, I'll share with you something interesting, because this was a big win for us at Bioreferral Only, when Joe Stump and I were doing the big real estate seminars. One of the things I think about it now when we talk about the hidden assets that we have, that one of the things identified that we had was excess capacity in the events, right? If we had 650 people at an event, but we had room for 800 people, we had an excess capacity of 150 spots, right, that were perishable if we didn't fill the space. And it could be just adding 2 extra rows at the back of the event kind of thing. Our incremental cost on doing that was virtually nothing, a workbook, right? That was really the total cost. We also had a big list of people who had been former members of Bioreferral, former members who were in the program. And so I started putting these together, and for about 3 years, we did this program that was millions of dollars that it produced for us, was sending a letter to, if we were going to San Francisco, for instance, we'd send a letter to all of the former members who had been with us over the, this was 10-year history of it kind of thing. People had been through, because we'd made a lot of changes. We had a whole tool-based membership program now. And so we sent a letter inviting them to come be our guest, to come into the main event. We gave them a nice, a real certificate that had the corporate seal, a raised thing. So it was a real $1,000 value, for they didn't have to pay anything to come to the event. They just had to get there. And we would have, 60, 80, 100 people per event come to the event as our guests, and they would convert back into the coaching program at the same rate as the people who were there for the first time. So we'd invite 100 people, and we would get, 45 or 50 of them to rejoin the program for the cost of sending a letter and a workbook. It was really so you think about you having 11,000 of those would be an interesting thing to maybe do a purpose-built workshop for alumni. Yeah.
Well, they can. I mean, it's my security clearance is not high enough to know exactly the details of this.
Right.
But, I can encourage the project. I can outline the project, and I'll have others work out the details of that.
Yeah.
There's some simplicities that I don't care to do myself. Simplifications that I don't care to do myself. Yeah. But, I had an interesting thought. if you do it right, Zoomcasting is a lot like podcasting.
Absolutely. Say more about that, because I have a similar experience that what I think you're saying is what I believe is true too. But
yeah, I mean, well, let me ask you the question. When I said that, what was the connection that you saw?
The first thing is Joe Polish and I have been doing it. We've done 2 now. I Love Marketing meetup groups where we're doing live Zooms, and we've had 190 people on the last one we did, and we record them as a live podcast.
Knowledge product.
We've got
the knowledge product.
Yeah, but we've got 190 people there with us. And yeah.
Did you ever have 190 on any meetup before that?
Not because all the meetups were live meetups. So we typically, there were meetups all over the country that would have, 15, 20, 30 people come to a meetup, but never that I know of. I think maybe London at one point and Toronto at one point maybe had 100 people, but we had 190 from all over the world, which is which is great. But I just think that's all part of this whole,
Well, I think the other thing that struck me, I'm doing a lot of thinking on a lot of different topics right now, but there's something peculiarly American about Zoomcasts and podcasts.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you the 3 qualities that do it. One is the best podcasts are the best Zoomcasts. I'll talk about Zoomcasts are very informal. They're very practical, and number 3, they're very humorous.
Yes.
And those are, my feeling, those are European, like I'm using American to contrast European, are very informal. They're very, very top down. They're like telling you. And, well, the other thing is it's questions where the person gets to think for themselves what they think about it. So, and I was just really struck, and I wonder if the statistics, like Zoom has gone from 10 million to 350 million users per day, 35 times. I can't think of any other technology. I can't think of any other product or service that has jumped by 35 times in 3 months.
Yeah, it's maybe Clorox. I don't know.
I know it wasn't Ben and Jerry's. It wasn't.
Well, no, maybe there's the whole collection. Maybe Instacart, Uber Eats.
Yeah, but I don't think so. That had such total practicality about it. I mean, once you made the jump, the 10 to 350 million, you weren't going back to anything. Like I think it's permanent once you made the jump. Right. And it struck me because, over the last couple of years, I've been talking about free zone frontier. And I think Zoom is just an incredible free zone frontier.
Yes.
You don't have to go through metal. You don't have to go through metal detectors. You don't have to show your You don't have to show your passport. You don't have to strap yourself in. You don't have to obey a set of airline rules.
If you take Peter Diamandis' 6 Ds, right, that what you've basically done is it democratizes seminars or workshops because there's zero barrier to entrance. Like even just months ago, there was some infrastructure and some travel. There was a lot of friction involved.
There was a sacrifice. There was a sacrifice.
that can economic. There was an economic cost. If you take really, boy, this would be a fascinating infographic or just a breakdown study to take what is the actual economic impact of one strategic coach workshop in Chicago.
Yeah.
That you take the number of people, 50 people who've taken 50 airline flights to get there, who've stayed in
the vast majority of them staying at a hotel at least one
50
night.
50 hotel rooms.
2 nights.
Yes.
Probably, some who stayed the night after the workshop. So probably
exactly.
works out to 50. Works out to 50.
Yeah. The
limousine, probably
limousines to the thing, or parking, meals, the economic impact of being away from their, the time impact, right? The time cost of that. There's so much of that which now has been completely eliminated. It's a really, really. It's interesting. The job figures came out. I think it was Thursday. It came out. Yeah,
Friday. That the U.S. The jobs jumped by 2.5 million in May. Okay. My feeling is, if you really investigated that number, you'd find out that most of the jobs were Zoom enabled.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're starting to see now that the headlines, because I always pay careful attention to the real estate implications of things like this, and all the headlines now are, two things that people are, and the emotional words, Dan, are they're fleeing the cities for the suburbs, and for two reasons. One, for the more safe harbor against than being in a condo building where every time you get in an elevator, you've got the germs of 500 people in the elevator with you. Being in single family homes, and the remote working. That's even the thing where most companies now are getting into the norm of this, and they're setting guidelines for it, but that's going to free people up to scatter further afield from a hub. Most of the time, practically people have to be within an employment center kind of thing, right? Like to drive to the office. But if you can be anywhere, time zones are the new geography,
Yeah.
Not a insignificant change.
So are you more in love with where you live than you were before?
I do love, I've always loved Winter Haven. I do like it. I'm in a gated community.
And this is a suburb of Orlando, right? Essentially, This is a suburb.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I start to see now that, my county, Polk County, where I am, Winter Haven, Lakeland, is
Polk County?
P-O-L-K. Yeah, P-O-L-K, after James Polk. Yeah.
President James Polk.
That's right, yes. And so Florida is poised in the 20s here to grow by 6 million people. And which would put it over
30 million.
Right at 29 million. Would put it up there. And so Polk County is poised to be one of the greatest beneficiaries of that's going to grow we're kind of centrally located almost in the exact center of the state. And so, but in any event, when you think about that kind of thing, it's like all these small towns, all these suburbs now are really going to it's going to change things, Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, that's the great.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that I'm just looking at the burbs are kind of not a central focus of people, the suburbs. Yeah. But my sense is after the pandemic and after the riots and the looting, a lot of people are going to be thinking about the suburbs as a destination for the future.
Yes, I agree.
Because most of the civil unrest was in dense central cities, and the worst of the pandemic was in the dense central cities.
Yes.
And if you can do your work, by Zoom, the one barrier that would keep you in the central cities has just been removed. You can be in the central city for meetings, but you're not traveling.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And that's the thing where now, it's really, I think that people are getting, this has forced people into being self-directed in their work, right? Mm-hmm. In being able to, certainly there's something that people would have to overcome is the odds of procrastination becoming an issue for people are more at home alone than they are in a workplace.
I think it's gonna put things in bold relief. You're either a producer or you're not a producer.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Because I've really noticed that bullshit doesn't travel well on Zoom.
That's true, isn't it?
And politics doesn't show up well on Zoom. Like, I'm the boss here, and you're just one of the squares.
Yeah, back channeling, right? You're just one of the squares.
Yeah, you may be a big deal at the golf club, but here you're just one of the squares.
Mm-hmm. It puts everybody on a level playing field.
And if you're wearing a suit, you look really odd.
It's true.
So I wonder, it's going to be an interesting study to see who fares best, entrepreneurial companies or bureaucracies, corporations, government. And, I'm posing the question because I already know the answer.
Right. Well, no matter what, it's always, everybody's going to have to be.
You're a CEO who never mixes with the people who actually work for the corporation, and now you're on a Zoom call and you got a suit and you're calling from your den in your home, and which looks odd, and you've got a prepared speech and you've told people ahead of time you can talk about this and you can't talk about that. I don't think it's a good Zoom call.
No, I don't think so either. It's more like a broadcast address from the president. Yeah. Now let's go to the Oval Office. I won't be taking any questions now. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's why I think it's American, because I think America is kind of a casual. It's a casual, informal culture, and we make fun of people. We make fun of people who are trying to get above themselves.
Yeah. What have you found now in with your virtual workforce now? That what has been some of the findings or the things that people have discovered good and bad about being virtual? Because you really pivoted quickly.
I don't know, because I just deal with, I just work with people that I work with. I mean, I have books I'm writing, I have podcasts I'm doing, I have workshops I'm doing. So it's just the workforce. But as an overall workforce, I really don't know the answers to that.
How has that changed your process, the way you work with your team? Then because you're still working on the books, right?
I'm basically fast filter and fast transformer driven. So I really don't initiate things until I've thought it through in one of those forms, and then I'll send the fast filter, I'll send the fast filter, the fast transformer, to the people involved. And I said, I just want to go over some things here. And, this is just what I'm observing, and this is what I think is possible. And what do you think? I'm always kind of leaving it open to what they think. Like what I try to do is, I've got some thoughts here. I've got some ideas here. And if we do it this way, I think this is possible. If we do it this way, I think something else is possible. What do you think about this? And so what I've done is that I'm a really good definer of what I think is possible, but I don't know what the response is.
Right. Yeah. So those, it's really, this is again, eliminating the trick, because I'm assuming that you would get together with your people, in physical meetings about the books and about things like that. And now you can get everybody on. Have you done Zoom meetings about your books now too?
Oh yeah. Well, with the individuals. So I have, I have Shannon, and all the books are driven by interviews on a mindset scorecard. But I've turned all the chapters into fast filters. This is the best result. This is the worst result. These are the 5 things. And that's been a breakthrough, because I can do that with my cartoonist. I can do it with Shannon Waller. I can do it with the editor, and I can do it with the writers. So that form, the fast filter, has grown as a centrally important communication. And the writer, who I never meet with, I go through the editor. She's been with me for about 15 years, and she knows how I say things. She's got my voice. And so her brother is the writer, and I've met him and we've worked together, but probably for the last year we haven't worked together. It's just that these audios come through, and then there's a video, there's a written outline of what it is, and then he puts together the chapters. And I think things are sharper. I just think things are sharper. And if something's unclear, it gets highlighted right away, and I get a question, and I'm not understanding this. Can you tell me what you're doing? And that wouldn't happen in person, because there's kind of political implications,
Right.
And the thing that I notice most about Zoom, it removes what I would call personal politics, not politics in the, in the big world sense of politics, like Democratic, Republican, conservative, whatever, but just the politics that comes from a power differential. And I'm noticing the power differential between individuals has been minimized by Zoom. For example, I'll give you an idea. Someone in a breakthrough blueprint workshop who would be awed by you, if you were in person, they wouldn't say a thing, but on Zoom, they might.
Yeah, there's some, you're right. I mean, in terms of, being, because it is, there's the 12 boxes or whatever. You're one of the 12 boxes.
Well, I just think, I thought Dean would take up 4 boxes.
Yeah, that's so funny. I wonder if Zoom's going to make that an option that you can take up 4 boxes. That's funny.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's subversive. I think it's subversive of personal politics. And a lot of people are going to resist it. I think CEOs of major corporations who've spent their entire life to be where they are going to be very resistant to being just reduced to 1 box out of 12 or.
Yeah, I'm equal. I can't be equal to them. I've got to be on a pedestal.
Yeah, I got to be on a pedestal. And actual politics, I think it's very subversive of actual politics. Government.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting, but it's kind of a leveling type of technology. You're only something if you got something useful to say.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Overall, though,
the fact that you have a Harvard degree means nothing on Zoom.
That's true. That is true. It's an equalizer.
It's an equalizer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well, I'm just so excited that you've both of us really. I mean, this first 90 days has been an amazing shift. I think you said it before. It's like a 5-year compression that it did. We're 5 years ahead right now by being forced into it.
Yeah, well, it's really, really interesting. I kind of think of it in terms of the, entering a new world, and I think that when you think about I'm kind of a real junkie as far as American history goes. So I go back and read about it because America is really kind of a unique place, an unusual place. And I think that the biggest mistake that happened right at the beginning is they called it New England, and they were referring back to England, Yeah. And I said, I don't think it's a new anything that used to exist. I think it's brand new. Period.
Yes.
I don't think it's a replacement for anything. I think it's the creation of something entirely new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, but that's, the same, we kind of talked about that idea, but that's an interesting thing going all the way back to that as a society, we tend to relate to the new thing only in relation to what it was in the old thing. Like moving, moving into cars, we started referring to them as horseless carriages, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the movies were talking pictures, right? I mean, it's so.
And a lot of them. And I think you mentioned this on the last podcast. Is that the early, the early TV series would open with a curtain parting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, really, and very taking that very radio show format. It was just like
live theater.
Yes.
Yeah. And I said, I was telling the people, I said, this isn't kind of like something old. This is something actually new, and we should just have our wits about us. The possibilities that we can. Now, take it for example, in our reworld, our in-person world workshops, the coach is the star, but on the Zoomcast, the manager who's managing the Zoomcast comes on and gives everybody the ground rules, and then introduces me, and then when I'm finished, the manager talks about 10 times throughout the 5-6 hours. That's Kathy Davis, is my manager. And Kathy gives the directions, tells what's going to happen next. And I never had that in an in-person workshop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's But awesome,
if when I
right?
go back to in-person workshops, I'm going to bring this thing that we've developed in Zoom back in. So the thing that's going to get most altered is actually the in-person workshops by this new experience.
You know what would be very funny, Dan, is you should get a box. Like, do you ever see the Zoltar, in the old movies, the Zoltar fortune teller guy?
Oh, yes.
At Coney Island or whatever, you'd put the money in.
Yeah, it was like Big, like the movie Big.
Exactly, just like that. So imagine we should have one of those in the front of the room with you in your comfy chair inside the box that looks like a computer screen, so people are used to the box that they're used to seeing you in right now.
Well, good morning. Yeah, no, good morning. Good to see you. Yeah. How's it going?
Isn't that funny?
How's it going?
Missing
being in the box?
Yeah.
Being in your box?
Oh my goodness, that would be so funny, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you notice on Zoom there wasn't any smell?
You're right, exactly. Oh man, that's so funny. That would throw people off. That's the best.
Well, it's interesting because people say, well, where do you think that this is going? And I said, I have to tell you, it's all learning. I said, it's like when I went from one-on-one coaching to workshop coaching. I said, it's that kind of change for me. I said, it's a totally different world.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that's so funny. We'll go back to Plato and the caves. Is that really, Dan, or is it a projection?
I think Plato. I think Plato had personal problems, and we got inflicted with it.
You think?
Plato. It's a shadow on the wall. Actually, it's coming from the sun. Why don't you get? You've been living down here for a long time. Why don't you go outside? First of all, vitamin D is very good for you. You get out.
Vitamin D. Sunlight.
Yeah, you're kind of pale. You've been down here for, and to imagine that we got imprinted with that imagery. I mean, I have to tell you, this guy says, well, you know what life really is. We're just shadows on the wall. We're not the real world. And that influences about the next 2,000 years of thinking.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I said, guys, he was just an introvert who didn't go outside very much, And
that's right. Oh man, so funny. Well, that's Plato's first appearance on the Joy of Procrastination.
Socrates is just an invented character of Plato. I don't think Socrates was kind of like the character that's. It's really interesting. How people get caught up in imagery, and I've really been, very conscious of this. And this is a shift of topic here.
Okay.
But I'm a real internet guy. When the internet came along, I just felt instantly at home because it's kind of how my mind works. Flipping from subject to subject. And but what I came to about, and I just wonder what you think about this. About 3 months ago, I said, the news is just a story. So breaking news. Well, it's not a breaking news. It's a breaking story. Somebody has created a story, and the first thing is, don't get emotionally caught up until you identify in your mind that this is one person's story. This has been created. It's not the actual facts. If you were there and you were checking out what he's describing, it would be different. In other words, your interpretation of it would be very, very different than what he's making up. And I have to remind myself continually, and I've gotten a habit, somebody says, such and such, inner cities are falling apart. And I said, wait a minute, this is one person's story who's been listening to other person's story. So what do you think about that? That this thing is, it's kind of like in movies. When I'm really bored with the movie, I imagine that I'm on the film set and I'm behind the cameraman, and I said, geez, when's lunch break here? Are we going to go? I want it to go on because it's all make believe anyway. I mean, first of all, it's just make believe.
Well, Dan, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna give you the perfect example to support what you're saying. If you recall, this week there was a lot of shooting and looting going on.
Shooting and looting.
There was shooting and looting going on, and on the second night of this, I decided it would be an interesting experiment that in prime time I went and I was toggling back and forth on television, which I know you haven't seen in a long time, but on television, I was toggling back and forth between CNN and Fox. And they were covering, of course, the events that were going on. And one particular event was the highlight of the day. And on CNN, it was being reported as President Trump threatens military against U.S. citizens. Okay. Then on Fox, the same story was being presented as President Trump promises military protection from violent looters. It was just so amazing that on one side it was that all peaceful protests, there was nothing but it was all very quiet and candlelight vigils that were being interrupted
and violent, oppressive military actions.
Yes, exactly. And on Fox, it was all violent looting and people running into,
And the military will protect us from them.
That's exactly right. It was either that you're using the military, threatening the military against U.S. citizens, or promising military protection.
Protection of U.S. citizens.
Exactly. Isn't that?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're absolutely right that it's the,
a story.
It's not news, it's a story. Yes.
Yeah. And we vote on our stories. Which story?
Which story do you want to hear? Right.
Yeah. Well, which story would you like to be the most important story?
Yeah. Wow. That's exactly
But it's really, really interesting. And I think that we've not been in a position previously in history to get, we're talking about here actually establishing a personal distance from what's being kind of beamed out at us. Everybody's trying to beam, and they're not beaming out at us because they know who we are. They're just beaming out because they'd like to have more people on their side of their story than the other side has on their story. So it's sort of a competition for our emotions. It's sort of competition for our, whatever decision we're going to make based on what we feel. But I've been very, very conscious, and I'm just wondering, if the being at home, and most people, the vast majority of people, just talking about the U.S. here, we've been at home. And one of the things I've noticed, I've probably explored about 80% more of my neighborhood on foot
right.
in the last 3 months than I had in the previous. Well, I moved down here in '93, so that was 27 years. And it's kind of given me a separation from, the other people's interpretation of what my world means.
Right. Because you are out physically in your world now, you mean? Or what's the...
Yeah, well, I'm just more attached to where I actually live than I was before.
Yeah.
I was walking down it wasn't a street, it was an alleyway that went for about 4 blocks, and I'd never seen it before. It's above Queen, it's the first passageway above Queen Street, goes east and west. And I went for 4 blocks, and I said, geez, I've been here for 27 years. I never knew that it went for 4 blocks. And I walked down, it's an alleyway, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like a scenic journey, but it was, but it was, I said, geez, I said, I've been here for 27 years. I never knew that it went like this, it's like a secret passageway, it just really struck me. And I wonder how many people have become attached to people, have become attached to places, have been attached to daily rituals over the last 3 months that they had not been. And this is going to make a big difference at how they look at the outside mainland.
I think there's something to that, because certainly people are more place bound than they've been maybe ever. Like, I think I'm closing in on, and there may have been a period in 2009 where I was home in one place for more than now. But I think that I'm, as far as like consecutive nights in my own bed, I think I'm closing in on the record for that.
Yeah, well, we've already surpassed. It's 85 nights that we've spent.
Yeah.
And never, ever, I can't remember ever a time where I've spent 85 straight days. I mean, I've traveled somewhere to break the pattern. And and so I'm looking around, and and I'm just appreciating things. I'm just appreciating, it's a kind of interesting nook there. I hadn't seen that before, but the other thing is, I think the reason I'm appreciating the mainland that I have is because I have Cloudlandia.
Yes. I agree that's the main thing, that's, because that's where it
it's all like happens. Somebody asked me, they said, they're asking already in the first 2 workshops. They said, well, what do you think it's going to be? June, July, and August, it's all Zoom. And they said, so when do you think the in-person workshops? I said, I don't know. I said, I just don't know, because first of all, people live in different jurisdictions that have different rules. And, if you cross a border, there's different rules in place. And so, I have to tell you, it's all learning to me. I just really, really don't know. And they said, well, this is really neat, but I kind of miss the something of the in-person workshop. And I said, but I said, don't see them in competition with each other. See them as added dimensions of each other.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Mm-hmm. So that if you think of in person, here's what my guess is: you're going to put more emphasis on quality of in-person time. You won't treat it as ordinary. You'll treat it as special.
Right.
And and a lot of people won't make the cut. In other words, that if my in-person time is special, then there's certain people who just aren't special, so they're not going to be part of my in-person time. But think of Cloudlandia. Think of the Zoom. I haven't sprung on Dean. I haven't sprung on the secret word Cloudlandia yet.
No, exactly.
No, I just want to let you know that this is inside knowledge.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, but I said, just think about Zoom. That Zoom allows you to. How many of you are doing more, better meetings since you've been using Zoom? And I said, so think about that as quantity, and think about in person as quality. and it's like a Venn diagram, a Venn diagram where two circles intersect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got this growing value in the middle because you're partaking of both worlds.
Yes. I think that's really boy, we're just such interesting times. It's so, you think about where we are right now. It's just, I honestly, this is just another dimension that we don't even realize what we have, yet. It's the full.
Well, it hasn't happened a lot of times in each of our lives. That you get this big of a, and the big thing, people said, well, you guys have really, taken advantage of Zoom. And I said, I want to let you in on a secret there. I said, the only reason that we're taking advantage of Zoom is because you're taking advantage of Zoom.
Right.
Yeah. I said, if you have one telephone, it's not worth very much.
Right. The network effect required. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, we've been on Zoom for 6 years. You guys weren't.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Absolutely. That people, Zoom was, but I'll tell you my use of Zoom was really a intermittent kind of thing. It was a almost like special thing. But when there was it wasn't the go-to thing for sure.
Well, here's the thing. Can you imagine what a meeting over the last couple months have been at Skype? Skype headquarters.
Oh my goodness!
Google GoToMeeting and whatever.
Well, now everybody's scrambling now. Microsoft Teams and Facebook and trying to integrate it into Messenger, and Google trying to do it. There's nobody who's going to be able to get past.
Well, they're not the verb. They're not the verb.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
You got to be a Jackson.
Yes, that's right. It's in my domain name.
No.
Zoom with Dean.
Well, first of all, if you just think about it, the company that just does this is probably going to be better than the companies where this is just part of something much bigger. Yeah.
I agree. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like 25 years ago, the guy at Kodak who invented electronic cameras is at the board meeting, and he's trying to say that he's got a new invention that's going to eliminate 80% of Kodak's cash flow.
Yeah. Right. That's not going to be the thing. Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this is, but I think I mentioned it's kind of exciting that it could open up new possibilities for businesses that used to thrive, but now, when the internet came on, they didn't like the Learning Annex as an example of having a catalog of things that you could learn. What I'm really noticing too is more and more people are creating OTT platforms for almost like Netflix things where you can go into a full environment on your TV. I know Nick Nanton has Success Network, and Dan Kennedy with Adam Whitty, the Business Advantage TV. So I was sharing with Joe Polish. That could be what Genius Network. And
the reason is it becomes. We're going to. I tell people, we kind of really got very, very comfortable with this 2-hour thing. And I says, in addition to your quarterly workshop, every month you're going to get 2-hour things where I'm going to create new material for it. It's not going to be it's not going to be a repetition. And I said, And the reason is because just for 2.5 months, I got used to doing this. And why should I stop? Simply because of a calendar issue, like we've been outside of calendar for the last 3 months, and now we're back into calendar and we've got dates. But I said, it's not like we're going to leave behind things that we've developed that are new. I said, we're going to bring them in. So you'll get your workshop, and then you have an opportunity of 6 2-hour sessions between workshops.
Yeah. Things are getting better.
Which you would have never paid any attention to if the pandemic hadn't happened,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Wow, this is exciting, and we're still in the joy of procrastination.
Yes, we are.
as much as we love what procrastination has done to our lives, there's a deadline. I can hear the clock ticking, middle of July. Arbitrarily, I'll just say it was the 15th of July. I'll just arbitrarily say.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And that's, whichever is the Sunday after the 15th of July, we're officially into Welcome to Cloudlandia.
This is perfect. That's good. And the whole, I'm going to put a bookmark on the things. One of the things that I was wanted to talk about as we reflect on the big learnings that we developed in the joy of procrastination was the 10 minutes unit. As I was reflecting back, how I found that to be a very useful tool. So maybe we'll kick off our next episode with
we'll
that.
Talk about, we'll talk about that. Yeah. And, especially as 10 minutes in the mainland is very different than 10 minutes in Cloudlandia.
That's true. And I have an idea about that, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts about that too. So yeah. I think you prepare more for 10 minutes in Cloudlandia than you do for 10 minutes in the mainland. That's one of the things I've really noticed. Well, we're certainly more cavalier with the 10 minutes in the mainland. Yeah, you're right. We got a lot of them, Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah, so, you wasted 60 of them today, so, there's more tomorrow.
Right. That's the truth.
But you weren't getting reviews in the mainland, but you're getting reviews on Cloudlandia.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody said, the biggest difference with that they've noticed is firing people in not Cloudlandia, but on Zoom. They said it's easier firing people on Zoom. You just don't give them the number. You just don't give them the number
anymore. Yeah.
No.
I got it. And then you just delete the box. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, and true.
And it's true. And I think there's that awareness that you got to show up,
Yeah.
Show up.
Yes.
Contribute.
Yeah.
Be useful. I think there's just an emphasis on all these qualities,
Yeah. I love it.
Okay.
All right, Dan.
I'll see you next week.
Yeah,
I know
same time.
I know it's next week because I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere either. I can't wait.
Okay. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye, Dan.
Okay, bye.